Okay, Kathy Lundeen here in Sandy Hardin of the Buzz Killers. Seeing we just celebrated America's birthday, the 4th of July, we are going to interview a member of our family, Karina Tovar. She is recently a naturalized American citizen. She's going to give us a little background of her life, an introduction, and then some suggestions on how we can improve the immigration process. So, take it away, Karina.
Hi, my name is Karina Tovar. I was born in Mexico City and I immigrated to the United States around 2012, 2013, yeah, 2012. As far as my immigration story, I actually came to the country illegally. I did what most people do, which is not necessarily crossing the river or anything like that, is overstaying your visitor's visa. So I overstayed my visa with my family, and the reason for that was that our situation in Mexico City was really hard after Vicente Fox became president. So both my parents lost their jobs, they lost their savings, so we pretty much decided to go and be with my dad's family who lived in El Paso, Texas. And then after that, I believe there was like a couple months before my visa was going to be expiring, or was going to be expired. My dad, who is a U.S. resident, applied for me, but with residency, as soon as you become 17, then with every time that you apply through residency through a resident, the timeline or the wait is longer. And it also depends on like your nationality and your age. So because I came here before I was 17, they had me kind of like on one timeline. But as soon as I became 17, then they pushed me further back. So at that point, I was going kind of like just to high school. I finished high school, I went to college, and I went to college through a special program in the UT system that allows immigrant kids to continue going to college and pay resident fees instead of foreigner fees, with the only, I guess, requirement that you become a resident or a citizen soon, or that you have a way to become a citizen or resident, and then, or at least before you graduate. My mom, who also came here, was actually also filing her paperwork to become a resident, and because she was a spouse, she became resident a whole lot quicker, which she was actually able to file for residency or have a residency claim through my dad's sons, who are, I guess, would be, they're not really related to my mom, but she could make that claim that she was their mother because they did live with us for a little bit. So because one of my brothers ended up helping her with her status, and he's a citizen, the whole process went by faster, and after she had her residency like 3 years later, she was able to petition for me. So they kind of took some of the time that I had already from my residency with my dad, and then I just had to kind of like wait the process out with my mom's petition, and I became a resident. So at that point, I was able to go to school and be like, okay, I fixed all my stuff, changed my status, got my social security number, and pretty much after that was just kind of like thinking of applying for U.S. citizenship, and I decided to do that so that my residency that expired, I think, after 10 years, so I wouldn't have to renew the residency. So I just went ahead and became a citizen, and that process was It's fairly simple if you don't have any or have had any legal issues like a DUI or even traffic tickets can hurt the process if you have them. So in my end, it was all fairly simple. It was just making sure that I had all my information, all the history, because that's pretty much what the application is. They want you to know everything about you, like where you've lived, where have you worked, how you came in, and they just kind of like verify that against what they know about you, just to make sure that everything is correct. And then after that, you have to study, well, you submit that application and you study for the U.S. citizenship test, which is not that hard. It's mostly American history. So it's like really simple questions that someone who went to high school in the U.S. could probably solve from like their government classes or their history classes or civics. So that's pretty much it. And then once you fill your application, they give you kind of like a wait time for you to get your interview. And the interview, they check your paperwork again, make sure that you are who you say you are. They take photos of you, fingerprints, and then they go and ask you the citizenship questions. And if you do all that correctly, then you're pretty much on your way to become a citizen. And then after that, they tell you right there and then like, yes, you passed, or no. And if it's no, then I don't know what happens. I think you can actually refile it, but I think you have to do it with a lawyer. And sometimes, like if it was like maybe you didn't pass the citizenship test, they give you like a second chance. But then after that, they give you an appointment for your naturalization ceremony, and once you go in, it's just gonna they take any kind of foreign document that you had. So they took my residency card, they took a lot of other little things, and then they give me kind of like a naturalized birth certificate or naturalization certificate. And after that, you just pretty much claim citizenship status, and you can go to like the Social Security office and claim your Social Security for when that comes. And that's pretty much it.
What was the time frame from when you decided to become a citizen to when you went to the ceremony? How long did it take you?
I think it was the whole process 8 months.
8 months.
It took about 8 months. It's usually like around 4 to 6 months, but because immigration being a hot topic right now, and a lot of people getting legal status, it tends to be pushed back a little if there's like long waits because of whoever's in the queue or how many are in the queue.
So while you were a resident, you were working in this country, paying taxes?
Yep.
Very good. And where did you go to college?
The University of Texas at El Paso.
And then you went to master's, you have your master's? And what college was that?
That was in the Mass Art, or Massachusetts College of Art.
And where do you work now? You haven't?
Yeah, I work for a company named Rejoiner.
Very good.
So you've had a long
Yeah.
journey.
It was a long journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was the total cost?
I think it was like 600 and something, if you consider like the fee that you have to put and anything else that you might need. But yeah, that was
About
pretty much
600.
it. Yeah.
Wow.
But your family had to,
Well, that was for like the citizenship aspect. For the residency, that was a whole lot more. That was more expensive because of how we came and our status. For that, we actually needed like a lawyer, and I remember that the prices were really, really high because of all the paperwork that I needed to have, but I don't really know what it actually was.
but it was expensive. It's a lot. It's a
Yeah,
lot.
anytime you hire like an immigration lawyer, you're like, it's like paying a tax accountant to do your taxes.
Yeah.
You pay for like their time, the whole processes, them checking, going back and forth, and kind of like a doctor, they charge you whenever you call them. So, yeah.
It's a long process. So what were the barriers and what would you think could change to make the process streamlined or easier, less stressful? Like, there must be things you'd like to see improved.
Yeah, I mean, on my end it was still easier, like it's not like I'm applying, or I was applying for like asylum or anything like that. So with the immigration system, I think that the thing that needs to stop is probably having quotas for each country. Just because in that case, like that was what kept pushing me back and back in the line before I became 17 for residency. It
So
was
the
the
quotas kept getting met, so you'd have to go back.
Right. So every time the quota is met, you kind of have for that year, as far as like, and it's specific to countries, you have to like stay in line waiting. So it wasn't so much that maybe if the quota was not there, it would have made me a resident sooner. But because it's there, there's people that waiting in their residency line for a long, long time. So that never really allows them to like become legal. Which is a big thing, which is like if you're applying for residency, you obviously want to become legal as soon as possible. But the country makes it so that there's a limit as to how many from certain countries can get in. So then it's like, well, then those people stay illegal and they can't really work legally. They can't really, I mean, you can pay taxes. There's a lot of people that actually pay taxes while they're illegal, and they do that to help their claim. And there's like a special form that you fill that you say like, well, I'm here illegally, but I'm paying taxes. So that's something that helps with your claim. But like I said, as long as I think the quotas are gone, I feel like that may like smooth the whole process out.
Yeah, definitely.
So do you think it should be based on merit, the quotas?
No.
The quotas and then merit-based immigration? Or it should be just open equally to
I
everybody?
think it needs to be open.
Period.
Like, yeah, I mean, if you put merit, it's like, well, what's merit? Like, because also think about it this way. If you make it merit-based, let's say that you're saying like everyone who has a college degree, then of course you're only going to bring in a number of people who have a college degree.
Yeah.
But then it's like, if someone has a better degree than a U.S. citizen, and that person has more of an opportunity to get hired, you're still inputting some ideas of racism in there, because then it's like, oh, well, my company should not hire anyone who's not a natural born citizen because they may take my job. And merit doesn't really help anyways.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like, I mean, when you think of a lot of, it's like I guess the classic NYC cab driver that you see from like Friends, that they here in the US are driving cab, but in their country they were like doctors or something else. It's like, what does it actually make a difference? Like there's people also who come here from, I've had friends whose parents came here also illegally, and they were like farmers. And the kid who ended up being born here ended up being like able to go all the way to like master's school or like get past graduate school and get a doctorate. So it's like, it doesn't really matter. Like once you're here, you're gonna push for the opportunity. So if it's merit based, it's gonna like, well, I mean, I may also be a doctor, come here and then just live on footsteps for the rest of my life once I get legal claim. So it really doesn't make a difference. I think it's just about it being open and opening more ways into how people can be legalized. So like the idea that you must have someone or some family in the US kind of makes it very difficult. Like you may have come here, like I know there's like asylum and all this other stuff, like sometimes you just happen to be here and you may not have other legal claim like a family member. So I think there needs to be a way for you to say like, okay, well, I've been here 2-3 years and maybe do pay your taxes. And if that is something that you've done and maybe you have been able to not have any hard criminal records, then you can go ahead and having your way to become a resident. And I think that would be like more towards like the merit idea, which is like you're here, it would be really
You're
hard to
contributing.
become residents, but yeah, you're contributing to the economy.
You're self-sufficient and you're
Yeah.
contributing, so, which is good.
So your family's from El Paso.
Yeah, my dad's
That's what
always
they-
from, yeah.
Just, what are the conditions in El Paso? Like, you've been there. Like,
Yeah,
me and
you've been there
Sandy
last 2
actually
weeks.
wanna go to El Paso.
Yeah.
You're gonna take us.
It's like any other country. El Paso is not that much different from like San Antonio. It just happens to be across the border from Mexico.
Is the immigration down there a problem?
Not at all. Like, there's a lot of people who live in El Paso who are either residents or citizens and work in Mexico.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people who are Mexican residents or citizens and work in El Paso. So, I mean, what Beto O'Rourke says about El Paso being a special place, it is kind of true, because it's a good way of like, it's a city that sets an example of like, if we had not necessarily open borders, but
Yeah.
we were open to each other, then you would have a really strong economy. Like,
Uh-huh, yep.
the El Paso economy totally depends on the border. So there's businesses in downtown El Paso that highly depend on tourists from Mexico.
Mhm.
So if they don't spend some of their money on El Paso, then those people would not have a business.
Yep.
And if, and it's kind of like the same thing with like Juarez. Like, if people from El Paso didn't go to Juarez for like restaurants or dance clubs or even just to like go to like their parks,
Yep.
then the economy of Juarez would also tank. So it's like a symbiotic relationship
Yeah,
that
so
works.
it's a
Yeah.
good city to have other cities emulate, take
Yeah.
after,
And I
work
mean,
it that way.
it's the second safest city in the country
Yeah.
too. So it's
Oh, wow.
it's not like
Yep.
there's crime. And I mean, part of that too is just that there's really no reason to have crime in El Paso. Just because, I mean, as long as you're legal in there, you're fine. If you're not, then I mean, you're probably really not living in El Paso. You're probably across the bridge in Juarez. So, I mean, I think it's just like a nice symbiotic relationship where like a way of like free borders works, and we're just helping each other out. And I mean, that also has taken an impact in the culture. Like, El Paso is not 100% super American, but it's also not 100% super Mexican. Like, it's a nice hybrid of both. Or like, I used to work for a woman who was originally from Chicago, and as soon as she came to El Paso, she became like completely fluent in Spanish just because she wanted to like embrace that Mexican culture. And we've had people from Mexico too that go to El Paso and really make their best effort to be as fluent in English as possible just because they want to embrace that. So it's like El Paso's language is really like a hybrid of English and Spanish or both. So it's just like, it's a special place in that sense, and I think to that extent what Beto says, it's true, that if you don't put it as a problem and you look at it as a possibility, then it's really not going to be a problem. But I mean, that's because we live across the border, or El Paso's right across the border. I know it's really hard for like someone in Massachusetts who's never seen the border to like think about it.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, once you're there, you get to see it, and I mean, you get people who are like crossing the bridge all the time, just because that's kind of like their modus operandi is like they need to be in both places, and
Yeah.
both of them are home.
That's an excellent point, Karina. Excellent. Yeah, it is. I have seen the border in, like Tucson. I mean, they should probably look at El Paso. That's what I should say. Take you up on looking at how El Paso works.
And how do you feel about people who do it the other way from what you did it? They just come across with these people they pay to get them across the river and into the country.
Well, I mean,
And
It's
move along?
it's really hard for me to speak from their point of view because I do not know their story. Like, there are people, the people who pay like $5,000 or whatever they need to pay for that coyote to cross them over is because they really need to get out of the country. Like when I went to Guatemala, I saw like I was talking to other people and they were like, their country's not in great shape. And for them, there's 3 job options. It's either they work in the military, which is gonna lead them to maybe do a crime here or there too because it's so corrupt, or they become part of like the tourist industry, or the third option, which is kind of like the last resort, is just violence. So for them, they really have no option if they're like paying $5K. And they're not only paying $5K, they're like going across the southern border of Mexico, which is not a safe place because of all the gangs that are there. So they're running that risk. They're also running the risk as they travel up through Mexico of the narcos. So if they're doing all of that, paying $5,000K and risking their lives, it's because they really need to be here. And I think that, I mean, America has this history of being like the land of dreams, where you can come here and really like accomplish whatever you want to accomplish and have a better life. So that's why they're coming here. I mean, it's not, Mexico is not known for that. If it was known for that, they would stay in Mexico, or they would go south. They would go to another country in South America.
So, do you think America's kind of given you your American dream? Do you feel like it's all been worth it? That journey from whenever to here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always thinking of like what would have happened if we would have stayed there. Like, what would I have studied? What would I be doing? And I think that because I came to the U.S., it did shape me into a different person than what I would have probably done over there. So I mean, it did help with that, but it's also kind of like, that's why I feel like the meritocracy thing on allowing people to come in is kind of like senseless, because once you're here and you're given an opportunity, you're gonna make of it you're gonna take advantage of it as much as possible. Like after I graduated from high school, like I didn't know what I was gonna do because I was illegal. Still at that point, and a lot of my friends were going to college, but I couldn't apply for any college. So for me, it was like, well, what am I gonna do? And I honestly passed high school with not the best grades. I just kind of like did it, and it was fine. I learned, but I was like, cool. But I mean, once I said I couldn't go to college, it really hit me, and I was like, how can I go to college? How can I really like, how can I make it so that if I have to go to like community college or whatever it is, but like I need to like do something else after that, because it can't be that I'm just going to high school and then what else am I gonna do? So my parents worked with me really hard to like figure out a way to go. We found this program through the UT system, and once I there, I mean, there was no way that my parents could afford a $6K per semester tuition. So I just really pushed myself to like give scholarships and like really push myself in school. And it was probably the first time that I was like, you know what? School doesn't suck as much. So it's gonna like, once you're here, you'll make the most of it. I mean, there's immigrants that come here, work in farms, maybe because that's how they know what they know. But they also do it because, I mean, they need to feed their kids, or they need to send money back to their country. So it's all about, once they're here, those people will likely not do as many crimes as people think that illegal immigrants do, just because they're really working their butt offs. And I mean, there is crime within illegal communities, but it's usually like whenever they can get a job. So as if there's no open or a flexible border or a flexible opportunities to become legal, then those people are gonna go into crime because how else are they gonna get money to pay rent or to feed their families? So it's like the problem with immigration, it's only a problem if we think of it of like, let's not allow people in. It's not like, okay, well, yeah, I mean, we can't let everyone in, of course, but it's like, let's make sure that we allow people to come in and become legal and figure out ways in which we can help them become legal. Like the Dreamers, if that goes away, a lot of those kids have no future. And some of those kids have also gotten in debt for college. They have also they're also going into internships, and then after that is like, well, if that is gone, then what's that internship for? And a lot of those kids are feeding some of their families, so they're helping feed their families because maybe mom and dad don't make as much, or they have 5 other siblings to take care of. So, I mean, it would be a huge batch of the population that we would be actually be hurting ourselves economically because those are taxpayers. Those are people who are going to increase the economy with their output. So, I mean, immigration is really all about like, how can we get you to help the country? How can we help you to help us?
Right, it's a good,
That is
that's
good.
very good. How can we get you to help us?
Yeah, so that whole process has to be streamlined, so those dreamers can be citizens. 'Cause
Were you in
that's-
the dreamer category?
I would have been, but I mean, when I was a resident, there was very little chances that it would actually be signed. And once it got signed, I was already a resident.
Okay.
So that's why we decided to file for my residency, because we were not sure when the Dreamers Act was going to pass.
Interesting. Very good.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's
You
very
did
good.
excellent.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions?
No, that's
Do you have anything else that you want to say that would help the process?
No, I think I'm good.
We're glad to have you in the family. Nice
Yeah,
to
we
meet you.
do.
Yes, thank you. I'm all set.
Different
Yeah.
take on everything.
Yep.
Mhm.
It is a different take. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How's that?
Great.
How long did it last?
Almost half an hour.
Good.